Can you really believe in love when all you've ever seen is divorce? Natalie had asked herself this question more times than she could count. Love was supposed to be forever. Yet she had learned early on that forever was just a word, one that lost its meaning the day her father walked out the door. She still remembered that moment. The silence after the shouting, the way her mother had tried to hold it together, her voice tight with forced strength as she said, "Daddy isn't coming back." At 7 years old, Natalie didn't fully understand what divorce meant, but she knew it changed everything. It turned home into a battlefield of custody schedules and whispered arguments behind closed doors. It made love seem temporary, like something that could disappear when you needed it most. And now, years later, that same fear still lived inside her. It had shaped her, molded her, taught her to never get too close. Because what if love was just a setup for heartbreak? That's why she kept her relationships light. Never too serious, never too deep. It was easier that way. Safer. So when her best friend suggested she take a break from her busy life and travel to California, Natalie didn't hesitate. A little distance from her routine sounded good. A distraction. A reset. She had no idea that this trip wouldn't just take her to a new place. It would force her to confront everything she had spent years running from. The first thing Natalie noticed about Jaden was his voice. Steady, warm, and calm, like the ocean behind him. She had stopped at a small bar near the beach, drawn in by the smell of fresh drink and sea salt lingering in the air. Jaden was already there, sitting at the counter, casually chatting with the barista. She wasn't paying attention to their conversation until she heard him laugh. Something about it made her glance over. That was the moment their eyes met. "First time here?" he asked, offering a small, knowing smile. Natalie hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, just visiting." "That explains it." "Explains what?" He gestured toward the coffee in her hand. "Locals never order that. It's terrible." She smirked, amused. Good to know. From there, the conversation unfolded effortlessly. She learned he was a California native, someone who had grown up with sunburned shoulders and sand permanently stuck in his car. He was easy to talk to, making her feel comfortable in a way she hadn't expected. And that's what scared her, because the moment she realized she liked talking to him, she felt the familiar instinct to pull away. Jaden, however, didn't seem to be in a hurry. He was patient, content to just let the conversation flow. And maybe that was why, for the first time in years, Natalie allowed herself to stay. But the past doesn't just disappear. And fear, especially the kind shaped by divorce, doesn't loosen its grip so easily. Falling in love is easy. Trusting it won't destroy you? That's the real challenge. Natalie wasn't sure when it happened, when Jaden stopped being just a stranger in a bar and became someone she thought about even when he wasn't around. Maybe it was the way he never pushed, never asked for more than she was ready to give. Or maybe it was the way he saw her, not just the version of herself she presented to the world, but the pieces she tried to hide. Either way, it terrified her. One evening, as they walked along the shoreline, Jaden asked a question that made her stomach tighten. "So, what do you think about love?" Natalie scoffed, kicking at the sand. "That's a big question," he grinned. "I can handle big questions." She hesitated, feeling the weight of her answer before she spoke. "I think love is unpredictable." That was the safest way to put it. Jaden nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And marriage?" There it was, the word that made her chest tighten. She exhaled slowly, keeping her gaze fixed on the ocean. "It's complicated." She expected him to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that love was beautiful and marriage was worth it, but he didn't. Instead, he said, "I get that." She turned to look at him, surprised. "You do?" "Yeah." He glanced out at the horizon. "I've seen love fall apart. It's brutal, but I've also seen it survive." Natalie wanted to believe that. She really did. But all she had ever known was divorce. The slow unraveling, the sharp edges, the way it left scars that never quite faded. Love felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure if the ground would hold or crumble beneath her. And right now, Jaden was asking her to jump. Some wounds never heal, They just teach you how to live with the pain. Jaden wanted more time with her. He didn't say it outright, but Natalie could feel it in the way he looked at her, in the way he lingered when they said goodbye. And the worst part? She wanted it too. But love, real, deep, vulnerable love, meant risk. It meant putting your heart in someone else's hands and trusting them not to break it. And Natalie didn't trust anyone with that power. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of her rental, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jaden finally voiced what she had been avoiding. "I don't want this to end when you leave." Her heart clenched. "Jaden." He reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. "I know you're scared, but not every love story ends in divorce." Her breath caught. Divorce. That word had followed her for so long, like a shadow she could never outrun. She pulled her hand away. "You don't understand. People change. Feelings fade. One day, love is everything, and the next, it's just gone." Jaden studied her for a long moment. "That's not love, Natalie. That's fear talking." Maybe it was. But fear had protected her all these years. Fear had kept her safe. So, before he could say anything else, before she could let herself hope, she did the only thing she knew how to do. She walked away. And this time, she wasn't sure if Jaden would still be there when she turned back. You can run from love, but you can't outrun the wounds that made you fear it. Natalie left California the next morning. No long goodbyes, no explanations, just distance, the way she had always needed it. If she cut things off early, she could control the pain. At least that's what she told herself. But 2 weeks later, as she sat alone in her apartment, staring at the untouched dinner on her plate, she felt no relief. Her phone sat on the table, Jaden's number still in her recent calls. He hadn't reached out since she left, and she hadn't expected him to. He wasn't the type to chase someone who didn't want to be caught. The problem was, she wasn't sure she wanted to be running anymore. Natalie sighed, rubbing her temples. The fear she carried, it wasn't just about Jaden. It was about everything. It was about years of watching love fall apart, of seeing her mother cry behind closed doors, of learning that forever was just another word for until it's not. She had always believed that avoiding love was the only way to avoid divorce. But was she really living, or just surviving? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She frowned, checking the time. Almost 9 at night. Who would? She opened the door, and there he was, Jaden. Standing in the dim hallway, hands in his pockets, looking at her like he already knew she was lost. Her breath hitched. "Jaden, I couldn't just let you disappear." His voice was steady, but there was something raw in his eyes. "You don't want this to end, Natalie. You're just scared." She swallowed hard. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I know what divorce does to people. I know what fear does. But if you keep letting the past define your future, you're going to wake up one day and realize you let something good slip away." Natalie looked down, her fingers tightening around the edge of the door. His voice softened. "I'm not asking you to have all the answers. I'm just asking you to stop running." A war raged inside her. She could close the door, keep herself safe, pretend that fear was protection instead of a prison. Or she could let him in. Fear builds walls. Love asks you to tear them down. Natalie didn't move for a long moment. She stood in the doorway, Jaden watching her, waiting. Finally, she stepped aside. He walked in, and for the first time she realized how empty her apartment felt. Too clean, too quiet, like a life that had never fully been lived. Jaden sat on the couch, hands clasped together. "Talk to me." She hesitated. She wasn't good at this, at being vulnerable, at letting someone see the mess beneath the surface. But if she didn't try now, when would she? Natalie took a slow breath. "My dad left when I was 6. One day, he was my hero. The next, he was gone. My mom, she did everything she could to hold it together, but she was never the same. Divorce broke her, and I had to watch it happen in real time." Jaden nodded, listening. She forced herself to keep going. I learned that love isn't permanent, that even when people say they'll stay, they don't always mean it. A long silence stretched between them. Then Jaden said, "Love isn't about guarantees, Natalie. It's about choosing someone every day, even when it's hard, even when it's scary." Her chest tightened. "And what if one day you don't choose me?" His gaze was steady. "Then I'd be a fool. But I can't promise you a future that doesn't have challenges. No one can. What I can promise is that I won't run when things get hard." Natalie looked away, emotions swirling inside her. Maybe that was the real difference. Love hadn't broken her parents. Fear had. The fear of fighting for something. The fear of staying. The fear of choosing each other when it was no longer easy. Jaden stood, closing the space between them. "I don't need an answer right now, but I need to know if you're willing to try." Natalie met his gaze. "And divorce teaches you how love can fall apart. But what if it could also teach you how to make it last?" Natalie stood at the edge of a decision she never thought she would make. The past had been her anchor, keeping her rooted in the belief that love was a risk not worth taking. But Jaden had shown her something she had never truly considered. What if the fear of divorce was the very thing that stopped love from surviving? She had spent her whole life running. Running from the pain she had witnessed, from the echoes of her parents' shattered marriage, from the idea that love could be anything other than temporary. But running had only left her exhausted. And Jaden, he was still here. He had given her space, but not distance. He had given her patience, but not passivity. He had shown her what it meant to stay. Now, it was her turn. It had been 2 months since that night in her apartment. 2 months of conversations, of unraveling old fears, of daring to believe that her future didn't have to look like her past. Now, as she sat across from Jaden at their favorite bar, hands curled around a cup of wine she hadn't touched, she knew she couldn't put this off any longer. Jaden watched her with quiet understanding, letting her take her time. Finally, she took a breath. "I need to tell you something." He nodded. "I'm listening," she exhaled, gripping the edge of the table. "I've spent my whole life believing that love leads to divorce, that no matter how good something feels in the beginning, it will eventually break." Jaden didn't interrupt, just let her speak. Natalie swallowed. "But maybe love doesn't break on its own. Maybe it breaks when people stop choosing it, when fear becomes louder than commitment." A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I think that's true." She met his gaze, her heartbeat steady now. "I don't want to be afraid anymore." Jaden reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Then don't be." She squeezed his fingers. "But I need you to understand. I might struggle with this. There might be days when the fear creeps back in, when I wonder if we'll end up like my parents." "I know," he said simply. "But I also know that love isn't just a feeling," she continued, voice growing steadier. "It's a choice. And I want to choose you, Jaden, every day." His grip tightened. "Then we'll choose each other, no matter what." Natalie felt something inside her shift. The weight of the past didn't disappear, but it no longer controlled her. For the first time, she saw divorce not as a shadow looming over love, but as a lesson, a reminder that love takes work, that it takes more than just passion, that it takes two people willing to fight for it. And today, she was willing. As she looked into Jaden's eyes, she knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. Love isn't the absence of fear. It's the courage to stay despite it.